Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa. Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orishas through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning in to Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by Botaniga Candles and more. And hit that subscribe button. Phil, you're giving me a lot of applause, man. I don't know, I'm feeling good.
Turn my mic off. I think you deserve it, man.
I appreciate it, dog.
Yeah, man. We're inching, or we may have crossed it. Who knows by the time this episode gets released. But I'm just going to put it out there. Congrats on the 200,000.
Congratulations to you, sir.
So you definitely deserve some applause, some love. This has been a lot of hard work.
Consistency,
many years.
dog. What has it been, 4 straight years?
With me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we never missed a week.
Nope.
Which is crazy.
Nope. Just a blessing.
Some people don't even have jobs that consistent.
No, before Ifa, I didn't have a job that consistent. I was a mess, man. You'd see me at 7-Eleven one week, and then I'd be at the racetrack across the street next week. Man, I was a pariah.
Yeah. So if you like what you're watching, you like what you see, you like what you hear, we're all on all the podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, Alexa.
Top 1%, right?
Yep. Probably top 1. Yeah, that's the top 1%, right?
Man.
But yeah, if you guys like that and you want more, make sure you guys join our membership program. It's real simple. Just hit that join button right under the screen there. And 3 separate tiers, each tier offering its own different set of perks. And it's definitely how we show love. So what are we talking about today, man? We're out of the Oak Bay series, right?
We are done with the old biz. I have like this relief off of my chest. Like we made it through, man. It was big, man. Those signs are the most difficult to speak about in the whole spirituality and corpus, in my opinion, because the old biz are just so they're so thick and they're so full of information and mysteries, and they really provide the building blocks for the rest of all the signs to follow, because you're going to notice a lot of those same themes reiterated in the ones that come after. So, the old biz, being able to get through them in a productive way, in a conclusive way, at least for the channel, big accomplishment for me personally. Just to be able to be done with them and try to do them justice, being that I know so many people with those signs, and I know so many of our followers and viewers have those odus, being that they're just very spread out throughout the world. So yeah, we're done with the old biz, and today we are going to make an episode called Prepping for Priesthood, right? So I'm not sure if you know, Phil, but I went to Catholic school.
What?
Yeah, I had a good tenure at Catholic school as a young man. Typical Cuban Italian family, from New York and whatever. So when we came down here, there was no way I was going to public initially. Luckily I misbehaved enough to practically get kicked out of Catholic school, where my mom pulled me out and finally put me in public school, where I misbehaved as well. But when I was a young man, it's real wild. Like, I've always been a reader. And, I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, so I wasn't outside too much when I was younger. As I got into being a teenager and an adolescent, at that point I started exploring more and, being outside. But, as a young man, they were very protective of me, and it was books were really my release. So, I was a reader. So when we were in Catholic school and things like that, I was always fascinated by, religion class, where they'd talk about the Bible and whatnot. Now, mind you, I was always kind of having an out-of-body experience or a disassociation, because I'm like, I'm getting smacked with meat covered in red palm oil, every December 31st at midnight. But, they're telling us we're destined for damnation. So as a kid, I'm like, oh, man, this is interesting. But, I took it with a grain of salt to just enjoy the literature and things like that. And I was always in the library, and there was actually a nun that worked the library, man. God bless her. I believe her name was Sister Eileen. God bless her. I highly doubt she's still on this plane, and if she is, she's a miracle, because she was an elderly woman. And I'll never forget, man. She used to tell me all the time. She's like, my son, I see you accepting the cloth one day, becoming a priest one day. And I was like, that's what's up, because we used to go to mass. He's got the bread, he's got the grape juice. I'm with it, And I found out, that there's certain prohibitions for Catholic priests, where I couldn't have a wife. And, you know, at that point, my aspirations of being a priest went down the drain. And I said, but I still feel like this call to spirituality. I still feel like, you know, it's something that interests me and that, you know, I could assimilate, you know, and really grasp. So I didn't realize, you know, based on our ancestral traditions and whatnot, that Ifa was a priesthood. There was a thing called a santero, and he actually went through a process. Or the Babalawo, he was a priest, and he had an initiatory process, and it was priesthood. So I said, man, that's right up my alley, man. Like, I'm into all that. And as I actually delved into what we were, you know, from a Yoruba standpoint, I was like, I'm all in. So, you know, the reason I'm mentioning all this is a big part of priesthood is the why. The word priest, right, or priestess, remember that being closer to God doesn't take you any further away from man or woman. It's just that you have assimilated knowledge and refined yourself to the point, hopefully, where you exemplify the same qualities that you're trying to motivate other people towards that are within these Orishas and this energy. So what was my why for becoming a Babalawo? I really wanted to learn. I can't say that it was a desire to serve initially. But when you start garnering or gaining more knowledge and you realize how much is benefiting you, you want to be able to benefit others that want to find benefit. So I think through the seeking of knowledge and the interest and curiosity is really what led me to the idea of serving. And at that point, realizing that you could take this information and provide it to somebody else in a practical way as far as a service or a support, and help them accomplish what it was that they wanted, you know, really invigorated me. I said, you know, the more I learned, the more I could help people. So that was ultimately my why. But I must admit, originally it was knowledge. It was knowledge of the liturgy, the mythology, but ultimately knowledge of self, to understand how your personal combination applies to you and how you can utilize it to lead a better life. So the first thing I think everybody needs to ask themselves is, why do I want to become a priest or priestess, but specifically within Ifa or Orisha? And there's a couple different elements here, right? Some people, their whys are all different, and every why is legitimate. Every why, you know, has its confirmation. So some people arrive to priesthood for health reasons, right? They're like, okay, I want to delve into this ceremonial process because of the benefits it could provide my health. Or for any other intense situations they could be going through, legally, any of these things. But with whys such as this, we definitely have to scrutinize, right? Because there's plenty of paths to Rome. And when you look at certain odus and the scripture it has about this, ideally, we don't perform priesthood rites for situations that could be resolvable through a bull. So if you have a situation where, let's say it's the health, right? Orisha is always going to provide benefits, but it could provide a benefit the same way a bomb could kill an ant. You know, it might be a little bit of overkill, you know, and the reason this has to be taken into account is not everybody wants to be a santero. Not everybody wants to be a babalao. Not everybody wants mano orula. You know, we think it's cool, or we're interested in it because we have that vocation, which is really the best why. The why where we want it because we want it, and we're not necessarily looking for any recompense from it. We just want to practice it, enjoy it, and it gives us that gratification and satisfaction. That is the most ideal why. But the least ideal is when someone has to do something or feels like they have to do something. So that's where you see a lot of situations where, okay, I have this severe situation with my health per se, or legally, or whatever it may be, and you're recommending that I initiate into a priesthood because of the bombastic effects it could provide me. Now, most people, regardless of price, are going to be like, yeah, all day, I want in. But remember that it is our responsibility as the people who are already initiated, not to gatekeep, but to provide due diligence to see if this person is actually compatible with this priesthood. You know, are they aware of all of the obligations and ramifications that come into this priesthood? Like, for example, when you go into the Catholic Church, they might not recommend you become a priest, even with all the benefits it comes with. They might be like, hey, receive a sacrament, or, pray 10 Hail Marys for absolution, an act of contrition, go to confession, whatever it is. So if you notice, it's much more practical because that person might not want to go through seminary and all the things that go into those steps. So based on the economic amount, sometimes those things are ignored when it comes to the due diligence of Orisha and Ifa. And it should not be, because what ends up happening is, Lord willing, the person does resolve their issue, right? But all of a sudden, they're going through a year in white. They weren't explained, hey, these are my obligations to all these things that live inside of these beautiful soperas, right? And I really don't want to fulfill with this no more. I accomplished my goal and I want to move on with my life. But now we have a huge ceremonial process that has occurred and a bunch of living deities that could go a couple different ways. They could end up in the garbage. No bueno. It happens. They could try to bring them back to you. Not ideal. Or they could just be there sitting in boxes in the person's garage for the rest of their lifetime, and no one knew they were a santero, and then that random grandkid finds it. It was like, oh my God, who's going to do this itutu? I didn't even know, because they've reached out to us for things like that as well. So the why is very important, and it has to line up with all of the other questions that go into, a common due diligence, So if someone is coming and they have situations with their health or things that are solvable, the best option we can provide them is Ebo, right? The reason Ebo is great is because it's no strings attached. You come, if it's a divination, great, or if they have hand of Ifa, that's great. We can do it through their sign. They fulfill the obligations of cost, time, and energy. Ideally, they're interacting with somebody who can get them the results they're looking for, because the Ebo functions. We just have to make sure that the professional's prowess can substantiate and support that process towards the result. And, everybody goes home. Yeah, we help cure them, or we resolve that legal issue, or that social, familiar, domestic issue, whatever it is that they're going through, at a much more accessible price point and without all of the obligations. Because to initiate into the priesthood of Orisha and Ifa is to become Orisha and Ifa. It's not one of these hobby things. It's not a pastime. It's not something that is going to be at leisure. This is something that is going to influence and penetrate every aspect of your life and being, to where every movement you do, every decision you make, or everything you do from that point forward is going to be influenced by the processes you've gone through previously. So the why is very important, where based on that why, maybe we could just get through with Ebo, the recommendations of a reading, or even hand of Ifa, because, someone could receive hand of Ifa and, they're okay with taking care of Orula and the warriors once a week, and, the little obligations that come with the hand of Ifa, which we're not going to focus on, but, the annual feeding of their deities, all these different things, and they go on with their lives. It's very entry level, because it's supposed to be a gauge as to whether you want to move forward or not. But let's say you do receive the hand of Ifa. Let's say you're on a really good routine, you're building a relationship with your Orishas, and everything's going fine. You've studied everything from your sign, and you're like, I want more. I've dominated this, I understand my responsibilities, and I want to move forward, right? So that vocational call, that desire, is the best why, ultimately. And everybody has a different why. It doesn't matter, but, the most important thing is to make sure the why correlates to the process, so that that why doesn't overextend into what comes afterwards and what is to be expected. I mean, because when you're going through priesthood process, it's not as cut and dry as we put these Orishas in a cabinet and it's over with. No, you've just initiated into a West African faith that is all-inclusive. So what could we expect leading up to this? You're interested, and the next question that really comes into play is who? Who do you want to be as a priest? Do you want to be somebody that has more of your Orishas for you, to aid you and your family, from a household standpoint, which is perfectly fine? Because the Odu Odiche says that the first clients of the spiritual practitioner, priesthood-wise, is their family, their partner, their children, their household. Or are you somebody that wants to open up a spiritual practice, right? And understand all of the ramifications that come with that. The amount of study the amount of preparation, the amount of cost of investment to be able to have all the tools necessary to be able to handle a situation that knocks on your door. Another big who is your family. Are they prepared for this monumentous step that you're about to take? Is your partner prepared? Is your children prepared? You may have come from another spiritual background that isn't really familiar or aware of these kind of practices, and all of a sudden you've caught the Ifa bug and you have the funds and you're all invested. Well, it's not just you. Your partner, your children, your home, your family, your community, all of these different things. This is going to be a very drastic change, especially within the Lucumí, being that we're going from possibly a huge head of hair and, regular clothing to, not having hair and being bald and, coming out for the next year in all white. So you have to prep the people around you and the loved ones around you and gauge how they're feeling about these steps. Because I've seen it happen where Ifa and Orisha has placed a lot of strain on marriages and relationships because you have one person who's really not that interested, maybe yet. And then you have another one that's completely invested and ready to go. They want to be about within a year, which I don't recommend either, even though it's not taboo. You want things to have a natural progression as well, where you get to know your elders, you go through your steps, you allow those steps to compound upon themselves, all of those different things, because things that are rushed usually don't end well. And that brings us to the next who. Who are you going to do it with, right? The selection of an elder, especially for somebody who's trying to enter into priesthood, is possibly the most influential decision as to how their spiritual career and life is going to go. A lot of people do much better or look better than they actually are at the moment because of the amazing elders that they have. So it's all about the elder, the guide, the mentor. Are you familiar with Larry Bird, Phil?
Of course.
One of my favorite basketball players. But
greatest white guy to ever play the game.
He was one of the greatest basketball players. Entonces, one of the players on the Pacers goes to Larry and says, yo, LeBron's leaving. Let's pick up some of the guys there. And Larry said, I'm not going to invest in any of those guys. And he was like, why not? He's like, because LeBron made them all look better. So when we look at a spiritual elder, I'll give myself as a perfect example. There were times that I looked better or I did better just by having the amazing elders and teachers that I had, where at a moment I might have been learning or lacking, but just being around them and getting on their pace and cadence and learning from them and emulating and somewhat imitating them, it made me look like an all-star, until I was able to come into my own and stand on my own 2 feet. So with anybody that is taking priesthood seriously, understand that person that you select is going to be your one-stop shop for knowledge and all things. So it's very important to allow yourself the time to get to know them and for them to get to know you. Like, for example, as a prerequisite to crown with my wife, Erica, Miss Poroye, there's a year of apprenticeship that needs to occur. Spiritual coachings, coming to misas, getting to know each other, because, in this establishment, we only initiate into priesthood the people we really get along with and like. It's very important to have that kind of fraternity. And mind you, just so it's never misconstrued, it's very key to understand that you will never be friends with your elders. Just like you'll never be friends with your parents. It's not ideal. But you can always be friendly, because the day you become a friend to somebody, you can't criticize them. You can't guide them. You can't be in that exalted position of mentor to help them get to a better self. So all of these things have to be taken into account. Can you handle this person's criticism? Can you handle their lifestyle? Can you handle how the interactions go and their demeanor or their teaching style when it comes to you learning what you need to learn to be able to accomplish the goals that you have, whatever they are, So the who is very, very, very important, because you're going to have to deal with that person and that person's going to have to deal with you for the rest of a lifetime and even possibly after, So, it's a relationship in every sense of the word. And, I tell people all the time, if you pick the spoon, the soup you must eat. So, or better said, If you pick that soup, that's the spoon that it came with. So your elders are your elders are your elders are your elders. You know, there's going to be times you're not going to be a fan of what they said. There's going to be times where you're like, man, this person's expecting a lot from me, from a spiritual standpoint. But it's because they want you to get better. And these are all things that should be taken into account before you take this monumentous step of initiating into Orisha with them. Because once that's there, you guys are stuck. There is no divorce here. There might be distance, but there can never be disrespect or divorce. So, for example, my moniker, Baba Ifa, literally refers to teacher or luko. So this space that we're in, we have people come all the time. Hey, I want to learn this with you. Hey, I'd like to move forward with this with you. But always understanding and making it apparent to the person, hey, your elder is your elder. That never changes. We don't speak negatively of our elders. We don't ever regret the steps that we take unless something heinous has occurred or unethical. But, for the most part, just because you're here doesn't mean that over there is bad, and that's a ethic and a criteria that everybody should maintain. We don't have to criticize each other's houses. We don't have to do any of that because by the nature of Ifa and what Obetumako says, Ifa says the person must attain teachers outside of their lineage to become well-rounded professionals. So understand that. See what resources are in place for you to be able to become that well-rounded professional that you want. Let's say you initiate into a house that, has a big drumming emphasis as a bawalao, but you're somebody that wants to learn how to direct ifas. Well, if that's not your direct elder's expertise or desire, there should be somebody in that establishment, possibly the person who directed yours, that you can begin apprenticeship with. So all of those things have to be analyzed depending on how far your goals go and what vehicles or methods are in place to help you get there, right? I use Erica as an example quite a bit just due to the healthy Orisha house that we have. And, there's a young lady that's going to be crowning soon, possibly. And she's getting closer and closer to those steps and being prepped. So just to understand what the flow might look like. When she arrived, she had a reading. We went through a round of recommendations. She felt positive about them, as far as the results and the interaction. Started asking about the hand of Ifa. Okay, hand of Ifa, here we go. We identify that Orisha. We identify that Odu. Then, we get those things done from the hand of Ifa. But at that point, now you have a rank. Now you have responsibilities. That of Apetebi. This is more focusing on the feminine aspect of things. We want you to dominate that space before you move on to other spaces and credentials and criterias. So, do you know how to take out aches? Can you handle that? Because that's a huge part of what might be done in the early steps once you initiate as Olorisha. So if you're somebody that really doesn't handle blood well, if you're somebody that doesn't handle excrement well, if, sweat, toil, some of the most grueling work that occurs, period, this priesthood is not for you. Because everybody starts there. If you can't take out aches, I don't want you really crowning because it's not going to help you. It's better if you just do it bo, and you receive your hand to be fine. You never have to take a week removing all of the debris under your fingernails, as well as the aroma. But if you are somebody that's able to accomplish this, yep, that's another check mark for you in the right direction. In her case, do you know how to serve the table the day of Ita? Have you studied your Odu? Have you learned how to take care of the Orishas you have? Because all of these things are setting you up for what's to come. Because if you can't study your Odu of Hand of Ifa in entirety, you're not going to learn the shell. No questions asked. So there's that. And if you can't handle, the 5 Orishas that you receive in the Hand of Ifa Lucumí style, you're definitely not going to be able to handle the other 5 plus that are to come. So you have to get that on a routine as well. And another thing is character. Another thing is tact. Another thing is understanding how to interact in these scenarios. Because Ifa is not a conventional interaction. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of protocol. And in these earlier steps is where you're able to fail. It's where you're able to have a trip or any of these different things towards refining yourself to where if you ever go to a random santo or a random Ifa or a random religious function like a drumming, you know how to interact and maneuver in a way where you're not, marginalized. So this is those opportunities where you're able to make those little faux pas and things like that to prepare yourself for when you're in the Coliseum. Because the day you go to another santo or an Ifa or a tambol or whatever, remember that these people are not your elders. Remember that these people are not your family. They're spiritual community, but they're not family. So they might not have the same patience with you. They might not have the same nurturing attitude with you. That's why when you initiate into a house or you begin, you're going to notice a really common theme. The Bawalao or the Oriate, we're going to be like, hey, stimulate your house first and foremost as you're in these growing stages, because you're learning so much and developing so much, especially your spiritual immune system, so that when you go live or you're outside or you're in the world from an independent standpoint, you know how to not only maneuver, but how to represent your house the same way your house should be representing you. My godfather told me very simply, he said, I have one rule, and my one rule is don't embarrass me, because I'm never going to embarrass you. And I've always taken that very much to the heart, so it has to be the same criteria. We represent each other, within this community and within this ambiance. So we have to make sure that the day after tomorrow, when somebody says, hey, who your elders are, that it's for the right reasons, to recognize the pedigree that you've shown, especially from a priesthood standpoint, and vice versa. So now that you have fulfilled all of those responsibilities of the hand of Ifa, and for some reason you're motivated towards going further, then we start looking into that who. So in our case, whenever I give hand of Ifa to somebody, they are not obligated to crown with my wife or any of the spiritual professional Orisha in my home, but we do provide options. There are plenty of people who have received hand of Ifa that have crowned elsewhere, God bless, but there's an even more majority that have crowned right here. So what does that look like? Getting to know your elder, spiritual coachings, interactions, a barbecue, kind of allowing the other wolves in this den to, kind of sniff you out and see if you are compatible. So like, for example, from an Ifa standpoint, when a brother comes to me and he's like, hey, I want to do Ifa with you. Wonderful. So there have been times when people have provided the full funds for Ifa and Orisha, and they've waited a year to a year and a half to be able to crown or, perform initiation with us. Because luckily we're in a position where we're not in a rush to liquidate those funds. We want to get to know you. We don't want any embarrassment. We don't want any controversy or conflict. And to be able to avoid all those things, we have to investigate you. This is the way things were. Like if you were going to become Awakwa in Cuba, they'd be like, okay, you're with us for a year, up and down. Yeah, this function, carry this, be here, give me a photo. I'm going to pass it around to all the other potencias. And if anybody has an issue with you, you have to assume it right then and there. So we try to emulate that as much as possible, being that people come from all walks and shapes of life at this point. But at least within our house, hey, come around, interact with what are going to be your god brothers. Hey, there's a Mano Orula, come perform this function. Hey, there's a Santo, perform this function. Like, we want to see how you behave. And, it's important to put the pressure on people beforehand, because you're only going to play how you practice. So if you're somebody that wants to do Ifa, and I put you to take out Aches, and you're somebody that's very resistant towards the process, Ifa priesthood is not for you. Or if we're in a Santo, or, we're going to feed somebody, or any of these different things, if there's certain resistance to certain aspects of it, just based on response, educate that person and help them understand, hey, these are the improvements I need to see, or these are the milestones I need reached before I can feel comfortable taking you in front of God and saying, hey, this person is who I think they are, which is basically what happens in Orisha and Ifa, period. So all of those things now, you're going through misas, at least in this young lady's case. 100 misas, has learned how to direct the misa, has learned how to channel their egung or their spirituality, has built great routines, has created that rapport with their elder, to be able to have that confidence and faith of, hey, we're getting closer to that goal. As far as character work, what aspects do we need to work on before we get ready for this huge step? So all of those things need to happen before any money's given, anything like that. Like, you know, because once we receive deposits and things like that, it's a soft approval, like, hey, this is going to happen. So before any of that happens, these are all of the things that need to be seen and annotated by a house as a whole. Like, for example, when I do Ifa to somebody, after those interactions happen and they've been around, you know, I take a silent vote. I'm like, what do you think about this brother? You think he can, you know, incorporate? You think he's ready? You know, is this somebody that we can be around on a consistent basis? All these different things. And luckily, you know, I've filtered things to the point where, you know, I only bring prime candidacy in front of my constituents where, you know, if I personally notice anything I'm not a fan of, I won't even bring them up for vote. You know, we might avoid that altogether and be like, hey, this brother, we're going to, you know, redirect him towards something different. Or Erica the same way with all of her other God siblings and whatnot. You know, if we notice anything ourselves, we're not going to wait for somebody else's opinion to corroborate what we're noticing could be improved upon. So if you're going up for vote, it's because we're pretty sure you're going to pass the vote. So all of those things now, you've been to misas, you're channeling, at least in her case, all of these different things. Okay, there's enough of a rapport. Madrina, I want to crown Santo with you. Here we go. So first and foremost, it's a matter of dollars and cents, right? You know, this is what the cost is going to look like, you know, because that's one of the most pertinent things. And understanding what is included there, you know, and what seal of approval and guarantee are you receiving from said ceremony by way of the establishment? What is the reputation of the establishment? Are they carte blanche? Are they grade 1A? Are you going to be able to go anywhere and say, these people crowned me, and be assured that no one is going to ever say anything contradictory towards your ceremony, and understand that that brand is ironclad. That's very key. And then understanding what your life is going to look like, you know, leading up to that, as well as what comes after. So leading up to Orisha, right? You got your misas, at least in the Lucumí standpoint. You've been to a bunch of misas, but now la misa de investigación. Now we're going to really delve. We're going to get a bunch of crowned espirititas you've never met before, and we're going to sit you down, and they're going to dissect you, right? And we're going to look as profoundly as possible into your spiritual background and makeup as a way of preparing for said Orisha process. So those are going to be spaced out. There's going to be recommendations that come with each of them. Homework. You have to get that done before the next one, right? All the way leading up to finally when we're about to go in the room. But also all this clothing and things like that. You know, you have a year's worth of whites to come. You know, like the Odu Ogunda Bara says, in the Lucumí tradition, we dress in year for a white because in that Odu, the goose wanted to suicide himself because of how he was being treated. And he didn't because of his Orisha ceremony and dressing in white, where he became the swan, or Osi. And he liked the way he felt so much, he's like, yo, I'm going to stay like this for a year. So that's why we do that, right? Apart from that, the Odu Bekana speaks of the white clothing and the white shawl to protect the Yawo, etc. So you have to now get all of these clothes. You have to understand how those first 3 months are going to look. You know, you're eating on the floor. You know, your hair looks different. You know, all of these different things. And this is how you're going to, you know, dress. And for the women, you know, my sorrows, you know, the amount of layers you guys have to wear, you know, as a man, long sleeves, you know, maybe double hat, long pants, etc. We'll be all right. But, you know, from a female standpoint, God bless y'all. So we have to understand all that, and you have to emotionally prepare yourself, because there's a lot of closed-mindedness out in society, and, you know, people are going to be staring at you. People are going to be looking at you. Some people are as unethical and outrageous as to actually comment about your appearance and possibly call you the devil and scream in your face and all this other nonsense. And you have to have fortitude to be able to handle this. You know, no one should be raising their hands to nobody, but you really don't want to squabble as a Yawo. You know, you don't want to be cursing. You don't want to allow people to get you out of your character. You are going to be tested. I mean, when we look at the Odu of Obeyono and what it says about the Yaoraje, you know, Iawo is a contraction of the phrase Yaileiwo, who was the princess who took Orumila through the ringer to be able to marry her. So it says Suru Baba ni Wapele, which means patience is the father of good character, and character or Iwa was Yawo, right? So the Yaoraje is nothing more than patience. Patience with those around you, patience with yourself, patience with the process. You know, mentally, there's a huge thing and breaking point that needs to happen even previously to initiation, because what ends up happening is, for dollars or ego or whatever it is, someone comes with the Orisha money. We're doing Santo to him next week, next 2 weeks. We don't know each other. More than likely, as fine-tuned as a machine as it is with botanica and all these different things, you know, something's going to be missing from that crowning. You know, it's very, very unlikely that everything is done precisely there. It happens, but it's very unlikely. And then apart from that, Ita hits different. You know, the person might not know. They might not be prepared. Maybe they're like, yeah, I want to be a priest. I understand what's to come. But the social and emotional ramifications of what may possibly be the hardest year of their lives, spiritually or otherwise, hasn't been gone over. So once again, Orishas can end up in the garbage. Orishas can end up in a storage unit. You know, the person might stop wearing white and forget about the Yaoraje and go convert. Like, all of these different things are avoidable as long as we take time preparing somebody or prepping for priesthood, right? So that's super key, because now we're ready. We got clothes, we got concepts. The person understands all the rules of the Yaoraje, those first 3 months, the other 9 months to follow, what happens when the year ends, all these different things. Have you seen Robert O'Neill, Phil?
Robert O'Neill?
They say he was the gentleman that eliminated Bin Laden. He was the SEAL.
I've seen the videos from SEAL Team 6.
Yeah, well, he gives great interviews and things like that. And the reason I bring him up is because he's talking about SEAL training, BUDS training.
Okay.
And he says that a lot of young guys come up to him and they say, hey, how do we prepare for BUDS training? And he looks at them and he says, young man, if I was to kick you in a certain place over and over again, a very painful place, if I kicked you over and over again there, would it make it any easier when it counted? And he said, no, sir. He said, so it's the same thing with certain things. No matter how much you prepare for them, it's only going to hurt more. So it's better to just buck up and go through it as quietly as possible. So Orisha is the same process, right? No matter how much we prep you for it, because there's so much you don't know, a lot of things are going to happen. A lot of painful things are going to happen. A lot of uncomfortable things are going to happen. A lot of foreign things are going to happen. Most people survive, right? If done correctly. But, you know, there's certain things that faith is going to carry you through. And not only faith in your spirituality, but faith in your elders. And that's why this selection process and that rapport has to be so profound, because I'll be frank with you, you get to a point in the Ifa where, like, those first 72 hours, it's complete D-Day. It's like we're storming Normandy. And unless you love the brother that you're bringing in, your godson, right? Or the brothers don't feel that rapport, that empathy for him, there's no way we're making it through, because no amount of money or Gatorade or anything is going to push us through this process other than that fraternal obligation of, we were there, this is a gentleman, we're going to take him through, even if we die, you know? So all of those things have to be taken into account. So now you're going through the Orisha process. So one of the most uncomfortable things you've ever gone through, oh my God, here comes Ita, right? They're going to tell me about my life. That's emotional. Okay, we made it through, you know, we're out. Now I have to survive the Yaoraje, you know. I have to study now. I have to learn now. A lot of the things that we could have learned previously now are even further reinforced. We have to learn adimus, offerings to the Orishas, how to take care of the Orishas I have. What is the protocol? Oh my God, I'm learning my moyuba. I'm learning koko, possibly the head rogation. Oh my God, you know, I might want to delve even further this year. You know, for all of those that are about to be initiated priesthood-wise, remember that everything you paid for is yours. So whether it's your ceremonial clothing, right? Whether it's your book of Ita, which is priceless, that needs to be provided to you even before the ceremony is done. As soon as Ita is done and our brother Oriate finishes with his stamp of approval, that is yours, you know. Make sure your madrina has a copy, you know. and start studying, start understanding yourself. The real initiation is not all of these animals dying. The real initiation is you assimilating this advice and making those practical changes to become the person that Ifa and Orisha says you could be. That is real initiation. And that's why Ifa stipulates, reinitiate constantly. You know, you've been in a Babalao for 10 years or an Orisha for 20 years. Go right back to the beginning, like Ofunchewe says. Not even from a literature standpoint or a practical standpoint, but from that of self. Like, am I still upholding all those principles when I was youthful in Ifa, when I was in the beginning and I was still enamored and glamorized by Ifa? You know, are you still upholding that, you know, for all of those that are going to come and seek your help? You know, all of the things you have to learn now, all of these responsibilities. But the most important thing to always recall is that your elders are there for you. And they're there to help you create a system and a routine for you to be the best santero or babalao you could be. When in doubt, reach out to your elders. And if you're ever in a situation where you're not getting that support, that's the red flag. Because, and this goes back to parenthood, this goes back to just genetics, just personality and things of that nature. If you just initiated somebody and they're showing this hunger and this desire to learn and grow, and we're not nurturing that, we're making a huge mistake. Because once again, Orishas end up in the garbage or in a storage unit, or they get broken to death on camera. It is the most painful thing to see amongst a lot of the painful things we see on social media. But the fact that that person wasn't nurtured is a huge issue. But also the initiate, that's why we go through this courting process with our elders to make sure that doesn't occur. Because things don't get better after the wedding. Either you're drastically and ridiculously in love beforehand, and it just carries on as we reinvent and renew ourselves within our marriage, or we're using the marriage as what may be a very obsolete band-aid for things we're not willing to address, thus making the matter worse. So if you notice, Iyawo, right, means bride. Literally, you are marrying spiritually, platonically, the Orisha that is initiating you. Not only the one you're crowning, but the Orisha that your elder is providing to be able to facilitate your initiation in the Lucumí process, where we can initiate into said Orisha without our elder having that same Orisha. So all of those things have to be taken into account beforehand. So we just made it through our year in white, wild stuff. And now, oh my God, I don't have to dress in white anymore. What am I doing now? Well, we're continuously learning. When in doubt, reach out to your elder or study. But what are your obligations now? All of these Orishas have to be fed annually, right? Ideally. But definitely your guardian Orisha and Eshu, who's non-negotiable. We have to take care of them periodically through the year. You know, we have to make sure we perform Ibori, or offerings to our head, that year. Annually, especially on our Ocha birthday festival, however you want to term it. You know, studying, understanding all of the obligations that go, even if you're not going to be a practical personality. Like, let's say you're somebody that crowned for you and to alleviate your household and your loved ones, we still have to study and prepare for that, you know, and understand that our elders are not always going to be there. They will be accountable, but as you get older, ideally you should need them less. It's like my children. There's a big difference between my 2-year-old and my 24-year-old. Conversations are completely different, you know, but my 24-year-old doesn't need me as much as my 2-year-old. So understand that every year that goes by within your priesthood, you should be closer to wisdom and further from the need of your elders' wisdom, because ideally they've imparted it on you based on your frequency around them. Now, if you're somebody that wants to open up a spiritual practice, you're constantly growing. You're constantly studying viciously because you want to be that resource to the people around you. You know, I remember getting to a point within my own practice and my own study where I'm like, hey, you know, based on the traffic we're receiving, based on what we're being solicited for, I could live off what I know now forever. I would never have to pick up another book. I would never have to learn another process. Like, I could just live off of this. And some brothers do. Some people do. But there's a disease out there, Phil, and it's called ambition. And it is a very, very toxic thing. When unmitigated, it can be a very taxing thing because And I think it goes back to genetics. I think everybody's just made for different things. But if you're somebody that wants to set up shop and really provide for this community, you have to have ambition, because that is the only thing that is going to keep you up till 2, 3 in the morning studying. That is the only thing that is going to electively motivate you towards picking up another book, another piece of paper, having the humility to learn something from somebody else and all of the critiques that come with it. It's this thing called ambition. And it's not for the ego. It should always be motivated by being able to assist those that need you, right? That you've been able to express yourself or manifest yourself as a beacon for them or as a resource for them to be able to assist them with their situations. You know, at the end of the day, the Babalawo and the Olorisha understand that this is slavery. It is spiritual slavery, but it is better to be the slave of God than the king of man. You know, this concept states that this is not an easy life. This is not an easy priesthood for anybody that stimulates it like this. You're constantly going to be solicited or needed or stimulated to help others. And at times, your own needs are going to be sacrificed. But all the prestige and all of the gratification that comes with serving a fellow human being who really needs it and deserves it is the most gratifying of things, you know. So we've gone over a bunch of the key points. I want to make sure I don't forget anything here because it was a very...
Can I ask a question, too?
Please do, sir.
You were talking about the year in white and sometimes how people can get kind of led astray from the year in white. Can you come back if you leave? Like, can
Absolutely.
you come back to it?
No. This is the prodigal son. I mean, Orumila is always here. Orisha is always here. That's why I look at situations like that, and it's very painful for me because I know what my Orisha cost me. I know what my Ifa cost me. And that's why if you look at Odus like Ikakana, it says you can't gift anything in Ifa or Orisha. Now, mind you, there's moments like philanthropy, charity, absolutely. Like, you know, at least once a month. And, you know, we don't post much of anything other than what's on the channel anyway. But, you know, I've always incorporated that in my practice where, you know, if there's a scenario where someone is critical or someone is going through, you know, intense situations or the economics aren't there from a verifiable standpoint, like, absolutely, you know, we can't forget that we're priests. We're not businessmen, you know. We're priestesses. We're not business women. You know, that obligation to humanity is always present. So, absolutely. And the reason I touch on that is because Orumila is the most forgiving. Ifa is the most forgiving. Orisha is the most forgiving. But that's why it's so sad, because when you see something as pure and as selfless as the soperas and what's in them, and someone being led so astray that they dispose of them. And it's not even because of actual vocation. Like, you know, and this is usually mitigated through that filtration process. Like, if you go through things conventionally, you know, there's very, very maybe 0.01 cases of somebody one day saying, I don't want to be a santero no more, or I don't want to be a babalao no more. This is the most enjoyable thing, you know. But if we rush through it and someone doesn't understand all of the things that we've discussed in this video, they might wake up one day and be like, yo, this isn't for me. You know, like, whoa. You know, I've heard stories of, not anywhere I was, but I mean, there's been 2 cases. Like, I've actually spoken about Alaos who had no idea what they were doing when they were being initiated. And there was a moment in the ceremony or moments where they're like, yo, what am I doing? You know, what am I going through? Santeros the same, or, you know, people initiating people that weren't prepared for process and realizing at that moment, like, that person was having an absolute cataclysmic, like, you know, moment. Like, they're like, yo, what did I just do? So you're going to avoid that doing things conventionally. Now, let's say there's a situation where, you know, you have that person who is being disregarded by their religious house, not being educated, not being supported. And that's why I'm saying you have to like the people you initiate, because, you know, the hijados, God bless them, they're going to give you a call and you're like, oh my God, why would you do that? You know, and I've told you 100 times don't do that, but they do it because they're kids, you know. I mean, I used to drive my godfather crazy sometimes, you know, and by the grace of God, with his paternal patience, like, he helped mold a man. So, you know, it's the same thing. If you don't love somebody, from a maternal or a paternal standpoint, spiritually, platonically, like there's no way you're going to be able to provide that support, if you don't want to see them actually progress. So that's why that filtration process has to be so, conclusive, because we don't want people to feel like they're not wanted, because the first response is, well, if you don't want me, I don't want anything you gave me. And then, but Ifa and Orisha always forgives, they're there. The Orishas, there's no reason to throw them out, because at the end of the day, they don't bother nobody. Even if you're at a point in your faith, which, I recommend getting around a proper community to avoid this. But let's say you're like, yo, I'm done with this right now. I want nothing to do with this right now. Instead of throwing them out, put them in a box, put them in the garage, put them in a corner, but don't throw them out. You know what I'm saying? Because at least, they're there. It's like with a family member, man, I'm really not digging my cousin right now, but I don't gotta, get rid of them. We just distance right now. I can't talk to you right now because we're not understanding each other, but we might be able to revisit that at a later date. So it's better than throwing somebody away or getting, eliminating somebody. So it's the same thing with Ifa and Orisha. If you're at a point where you're like, yo, my elders, my this, my that, and you just want to take it out on the soperas, at least just put them in a box and, have them in the garage and give yourself time to heal. I don't recommend this, but it's better than throwing them in the garbage or, going to another establishment that's going to try to ridicule these practices. I mean, I'll be frank with you. I have people that have come from all walks of faith, I have people who converted from Christianity to Ifa, Islam to Ifa, Judaism to Ifa, Hinduism, they come, but they really don't disengage because there's no taboo over there. People Buddhists who come to Ifa, everybody from every walk of life. The only thing I don't think I've had yet is someone from Zoroastrianism, but I've never desecrated a sacred implement from another faith. I've never taken a statue of Jesus and taken a hammer to it. I've never taken the Quran and besmirched it. I've never disrespected anybody's spirituality. But what I notice with Ifa and Orisha is every time somebody converts from Ifa or Orisha to another faith, it's a huge spectacle that's made. Hammers are taken, sacred implements are desecrated, to make a spectacle out of it. It's called the devil and all these other things. And, I've never seen a Santero do that. I've never seen a Babalao do that. There's plenty of things we could do better, but my brothers and sisters, they've never, ever perpetuated that kind of behavior. And I'm very proud of that, because I don't have to sully something else to look amazing. So it's the same thing. If you go or if you come or whatever, understand that you paid for that and you sacrificed for that. You might not like an ornament in your home. Not to say the Orishas are just ornaments, but you paid for it, so you might as well keep it. So it's the same thing with Ifa and Orisha. Time heals all. Allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to understand what's really going on, and then you can make those decisions. But don't throw away what you paid for. I mean, especially something this costly, And it's not about the money. Think about all the pain and energy that went into constructing this process. I mean, when you look at an Orisha process, and I want to give my regards to my goddaughter as well. She has performed fabulously with her godmother, like in every way, shape, or form. No one deserves it more than her. God bless her, or any other godchild that fulfills with their godparent that way. Every misa, every function, everything that's been asked of her, she's fulfilled. So, my compliments. But, it's one of those things where, think about all of the people and the energy that they put into creating you. If you're that Santero or that Babalao that's at this moment where like, yo, I just want to throw all this away, think about all of the people and all of the energy and all of the lives that went into making you who you are at that moment. You can't discredit all of those people's sacrifice, pain, anguish, and toil for somebody not fulfilling with you. So that's what you have to really take into account is, all of those people's sacrifice is not worth disregarding just because one person didn't do what they said what they were going to do. So what you have to think is there's another 95 to 98% of people who are going to do what they say they're going to do with me. And those are the people you have to seek out. But think about that. The most beautiful process, the most fraternal, communal process, there can be no evil there. I mean, human behavior is what it is, but when you look at what it takes to give a hand of Ifa, Orisha process, or an untefa, like, how could you? And that has to, be analyzed internally per person on an introspective personal note is, don't betray yourself. Don't betray, the person that did take this step, the person that did expect all of these things, and take it as step by step. And as we get older, we can't be so emotional to the point where we just base one decision off of another person's lack of accountability, disregarding all the people who with love and with effort and with obligation gave so much. So, be worth the goat. I tell people all the time, are you worth the goat?
Yeah.
Are you worth the goat dying? Are you worth, the chicken dying? All of these different things, things are going to give their life to formulate you. Are you worth it? And only you can answer that. But if it's anything other than yes, please, avoid. But if you are worth it, we're ready for you.
Well, you know who else is worth it?
Members, dog.
Our members. That's right, guys. What a great episode, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.
It was thick,
that
for sure. It was a lot of
different
points.
than before, than what you've been doing recently. So I like that one. I like the change there.
Erica's ideas, all of them.
Awesome. Well, guys, don't forget, join our membership program directly under this video. Takes you to a magical place where we have different perks. And one of the perks is you get shout outs. So this week we're going to be talking about and giving love to the supporters. They are our basic level tier, but they are anything but. All right.
Awesome.
So we are going to show some love to Carlene Jackman.
Oh, Carlene, blessings.
Ethan Lloyd.
Ethan.
Maddie.
Thank you.
We got Coco Celeste.
Members only.
Herd Tomboy.
Okay.
We got Yoruba Mystic TV.
Very nice.
We got Deshaun.
Thank you.
We got Love Yank.
All right.
Swizzolini.
The best names, man. Our members have the best names.
We got AP The Light.
All right.
Silent Joe.
Okay.
And we got Terror Meek.
Right on. Well, guys, you're the best part of the channel. We appreciate you. Let everybody know about it. They can definitely gain some value, I assure you. BotanicaCandlesandMore.com is up and running for all your spiritual product and service needs. We do ship. If you can't catch us on YouTube, be sure to listen to us. We're in the top 1 percentile for podcasts. All those truckers out there and people listening to us, you're driving to work. Thank you so much for taking the time. Be sure to subscribe. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast family. And until next time, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through